It took him 4 days to work out how to talk to it, and the method he arrived at was humiliating, and it worked. The first night he asked it questions.
What are you?
The wind's got round to the north.
No. What? Okay, where am I? What is this place?
The bed's made.
That's not an answer. That's not even a...
And then it went quiet, and it stayed quiet for 2 hours, and he sat in the dark and worked out why. It has 41 years of one man talking. That is all it has. It has every word Domhnall Mackay said out loud in that place since 1984, and it can cut them up and put them back together, and it cannot say anything he never said. It had no phrase for "What are you?" Nobody had ever asked it that. The only man who ever came here already knew. So it reached for the nearest thing about weather, and then it reached for the nearest thing about a bed, and then it ran out and stopped. It was not being evasive. It was doing its absolute best with the vocabulary of a lonely old man, and it did not have the words, and it had no way to tell him that. The method he arrived at was this: do not ask it questions, ask it for confirmations.
There are more rooms than this.
Aye.
A lot more.
Aye. A fair few.
More than 100.
Aye.
More than 1,000.
Away.
Is that a yes?
Away with you.
It was a yes. It was, specifically, the noise an old man makes when a number is so far past what you have suggested that the suggestion is funny. And Ellis Mackay sat on the floor of a corridor and laughed for the first time since Glasgow. He did not explore it. That is the thing about him, and it is the reason he lives. He surveyed it. He came up on the 5th morning with a rucksack, 4 litres of water, the cheap head torch from the shed, a bag of oat cakes, a tin of chalk white emulsion, and a 2-inch brush, and a notebook in which he had already ruled a grid.
Right. Origin's the door. North is that way. So A1 is the entrance hall. Numbers go in, letters go across. Mark every junction. Mark every door. Don't go anywhere you haven't marked the way back from. It's a dungeon. It's just a dungeon. I've done 900 hours of this.
It was not a dungeon. He walked for 6 hours on the first day and got as far as a stairwell that went down. He walked for 9 hours on the second and painted 81 chalk marks and mapped what he later calculated to be a little under 1%. On the third day he found a corridor 1,100 metres long with 240 doors on it, all identical, all of which opened for him, all of which contained a room with a bed in it.
240 on one corridor.
He stopped counting beds on the 4th day because of what counting beds was starting to do to him. The park was on the 5th day. It was under something that had been a roof and was now a lens 400 metres across, and the light coming through it was that same 7 o'clock in July colour, and under it there were trees, grey, standing, 8,000 years dead and still standing, because nothing had ever come in here to knock them down. No wind, no rain, no animals. There were paths. There were benches beside the paths. At the intervals you put benches when you expect old people to use them. There was a low wall around a shallow basin that had obviously been water, and the wall was worn smooth along the top in the places where you would sit.
People lived here. Somebody sat on that.
On the 7th day he got lost, and it is worth being honest about how that went, because he tells it later as a funny story, and it was not funny. He took a stairwell down 2 levels to save an hour. He did not chalk it because he was tired and because he had been in there 6 days and had started to feel clever.
Okay, that's fine. I go back up, and it's the third one. It's the third. That's not the third one.
The lights came on 20 meters ahead of him and went off 20 meters behind him, which meant that at no point could he see anything he had already seen. He had built the perfect map of a place he could not navigate, because the map assumed he could look back, and he could not look back.
Hello? Hello? The way out. Where's the...
The winds got round to the north.
Not now!
He was down there 4.5 hours, and for about 40 minutes of that he was not thinking clearly at all, and he sat down against a wall with the torch off to save it, and did some arithmetic about water that he did not enjoy. And then the dog came round the corner. Bracken, who had refused to go further in than the second junction every single day, and who had spent 6 days sitting at that junction like a bollard, had come and found him, and turned round, and walked at a steady working pace, without once checking whether he was following, for 51 minutes, and put him out on the hillside in the rain.
You absolute... Oh, you... I'm going to buy you a horse. I'm going to buy you an entire...
From that day on, he never went in without the dog, and he never went past a junction without chalk, and the second of those 2 rules he broke once more, in season 2, and it cost a great deal more than 4.5 hours. On the 11th day he sat down at the kitchen table with the notebook and totted up the grid. Chalk marks 409. Corridors walked, about 60 kilometers. Rooms opened, 1,106. And then he estimated the whole, using the stairwells as a scale and the outer wall as a bound, and he checked it 3 times because he did not believe it.
6%. 11 days, 60 kilometers, 6%. I'd need 8 years.
He never did finish the map. Not in season 1, not in any of the seasons after it. It is one of the honest things about him. At the very end of all of this, in a place a long way from a Scottish hillside, the figure was still under 30. On the 12th day he found the door that did not open. It was on the lowest level he had reached, at the end of a corridor that had nothing else on it, which should have told him something. It was not bigger than the others. It was not marked. There was nothing about it at all. He put his hand on it, the way he had put his hand on 1106 doors. Nothing.
Right. Funny.
He tried the other hand. He tried both. He tried leaning on it. He tried, and he is not proud of this, kicking it.
Everything opens. Everything in here opens for me. That is the one thing. That is the actual only thing I've got.
Open the door. Open the door.
And the city, which had been quiet for 6 hours, said something it had never said before, and it took him a moment to notice that the phrasing was different, slower, and put together out of pieces from further apart, the way you speak when you are choosing your words.
Not without the book.
What book?